In this video, we're going to use a very clever mathematical trick called completing the square. And the objective is that it's going to help us to give another way to solve quadratic equations, which quadratic are those which have x squared involved. So let's talk about this trick. I'm going to cut right to the chase here. So what we want to do is make a perfect square trinomial. So we've seen this before. We saw this in the last lecture. So if we look at this right here, we know this fits the pattern that it becomes x plus 2 squared because it has a square root on the front, a square root on the back, and then the middle is two of these guys multiplied together. 2x times another 2 makes 4. So this is called a perfect square trinomial. Now what we want to do is we want to create them. And so what would happen here is the way to create one, it always turns out, and you could think this through by the logic, but what happens is it's always half of this number squared. So if this number is half of it, it would be 2, and you squared it would be 4. Let me give you another one of these so we can take a look. Here's another perfect square. So this would turn into x plus 3 squared. If you take half of this middle number, you get 3. If you square it, you get that final number. And that's the case no matter how many times we do this. We could create this perfect square by adding the proper number. And the proper number is half of this guy, so 7, and then you square it and get 49. Now, once it's done, we could have then factored it, and you would get this. Now, can you see what it would be? We're going to take half of this number, which would be 6, and we're going to square it, which would now be 36. So you could factor it like this. Okay, you can always pause it if you want to try one. But we're going to take half of that 8, it's going to be 4. Square it, we get 16. Now, factor it. We get this. Alright, same idea, but now we've got a negative in the middle. It doesn't change anything. We still want half of it. So we want negative 13. Half of negative 26, negative 13. We square it. It's always going to make a positive. I'm going to add 169 here. Now if we factor it, because if you remember your factoring skills, this is going to make a minus. So we have square roots on the front, square roots on the back. We're going to want 2 negatives. And there we go. So if we take half of this, we want negative 10. We're going to square it. It's going to make a positive 100. Now, factor that down. You're going to get this. The square root of the front, the square root of the back. You write those there. And we want 2 of the middle signs. So normally I would do this if I was in that section. I would say square root of the front, square root of the back. You write them twice. You want 2 of that middle sign. Well, these are identical, so that's the same thing as it being squared. Okay, we do this again. Half of this would be negative 2. Square that, we'd have plus 4. Factor that down, we'd have that. Okay, now we're going to get some fractions here. So you see we can't get a perfect number if we cut this in half. So half of negative 9 is negative 9 over 2. So we square that, we get 81 over 4. So this one's a little strange, but this will happen. So we're adding 81 over 4. Well, the square root of the front is u. The square root of the back, we know how to square root 81 over 4. It would be 9 over 2. And that's how they got this. Okay, so we cut this half, we get negative 5 over 2. And then square that, we're going to get 25 over 4. We square the top and the bottom. So the number we want to add is 25 over 4. Now to factor that down, we want m and the square root of the back, which was 5 over 2. And we want this minus sign. There we go. Okay, so half of this would be 13 over 2. We square that, we get 169 over 4. So remember, if you square this, you square the top and the bottom, get 169 over 4. So if we factor it down, it was this. Square root of the front, square root of the back, you're going to take that sign right there. All right, same thing. If you take half of 1/2, do you see that it's going to be 1/4? If you don't see that, what we're really doing is 1/2 divided by 2 over 1. So we keep, change it to multiplication, flip it upside down, we get 1/4. So we want to add 1/4. If we factor it down, square root of the front, square root of the back, take the sign of the middle, and there's 2 of them. Okay, if we want half of 1/4, we're doing 1/4 times 1/2. We kept, changed, and flipped. We get 1 over 8. Okay, so we're adding 1 over 8, and factored down, it would be that. Ooh, this one's not pleasant. Okay, so half, dividing it by 2, of negative 2/3. Well, let's do our trick again. Keep, change to multiplication, flip it upside down. Those will cancel. We get negative 1/3. Okay, so that's the number we want, but we're going to square it. And that's like negative 1/3 times negative 1/3. If you want to think of it like this, that will be 1/9. Okay, so square root of the front, the square root of the back is 1/3. You take that sign in the middle. Okay, now we're going to be doing some more of this in the next section, but I hope that makes sense. So you always just take half of that middle number and square it in order to add the number that we're looking for. And then to factor it down, square root of the front, square root of the back, and it's always that middle number there. Middle sign, I should say.